I'm Rachel, 19 years old, living with hemophilia since I was 5. My parents always prioritized my sister Diana over me, but I never imagined they'd ignore my desperate calls while I was bleeding out on our bathroom floor. The night of Diana's graduation gala, as they clinked champagne glasses, I watched my blood pool around me, wondering if anyone would find me before it was too late. If you're watching this from somewhere safe, please hit like and subscribe. Tell me where you're watching from, and let me know if you've ever felt invisible to the people who should care most. Growing up with hemophilia meant I lived differently from other kids. I was diagnosed when I was 5, after a minor fall at kindergarten left me with bruising that wouldn't fade and bleeding that wouldn't stop. The doctors explained to my parents that my blood didn't clot properly. I lacked sufficient clotting factor in my bloodstream. What should have been a simple scrape became a 3-day hospital stay and my introduction to a lifetime of medical precautions. My family never truly adjusted to my condition. My father, Gregory, was a high-powered business executive who viewed illness as inconvenient weakness. He managed his investment firm with the same cold efficiency he approached my medical needs, as problems to be minimized and costs to be controlled. My mother, Eleanor, worked as an interior designer for wealthy clients, caring more about fabric swatches and social connections than my medication schedule. Both were attractive, successful people who valued appearance and achievement above all else. Then there was my sister Diana, 21 and perfect in every way they valued. 2 years older than me, she was everything I wasn't: athletic, socially adept, academically brilliant. While I spent my high school years carefully navigating hallways to avoid bumps that could cause internal bleeding, Diana was winning tennis championships and being crowned prom queen. She wasn't deliberately cruel, just oblivious to her privilege of good health and parental adoration. Rachel, must you bring your medical kit to Diana's award ceremony? Mom would ask, annoyed at how my precautionary measures might disrupt their perfect family image. Can't you just be normal for one evening? Normal. As if I had chosen to have faulty blood that couldn't perform its most basic function. The pattern of neglect was subtle at first, but grew more obvious over time. When I was 10, my parents missed a critical hematologist appointment because it conflicted with Diana's regional debate competition. At 13, they forgot to refill my medication because they were preoccupied with Diana's college campus tours. By 16, I was managing my own medical care because relying on them had become too dangerous. I found small comforts where I could. Art became my escape. My room filled with sketches and paintings where blood was just another color on my palette, something I could control. Online support groups connected me with others who understood what living with hemophilia was really like. And then there was Nurse Cassandra, who visited weekly to check my factor levels and became the only adult who truly saw me. Your hemoglobin is a bit low today, Rachel, she'd say, actually looking me in the eyes when she spoke. Are you taking your supplements regularly? Unlike my parents, she waited for my answer and actually listened. As Diana's college years progressed, my parents' neglect grew more pronounced. The financial priorities in our household became increasingly clear. Diana's tuition at an exclusive private university, Diana's apartment in the city, Diana's study abroad program in Paris. Meanwhile, my specialized care was viewed as an excessive expense. The weekly nurse visits were reduced to bi-weekly, then monthly. My factor replacement therapy was stretched beyond safe limits. We'll refill it next week, Dad would say, barely looking up from his phone. You still have some left, right? Just be extra careful. Being extra careful meant spending days confined to my room, afraid that any activity might cause bleeding I couldn't stop. But I held on to hope that once Diana graduated, perhaps my parents would finally have the time and resources to notice me. Perhaps they would finally see how much I needed them. I clung to this hope even as evidence mounted that I would always be an afterthought in my own family. When Diana graduates, I told myself, things will be different. I repeated this like a mantra during lonely nights when pain kept me awake and no one checked on me. After graduation, they'll finally have time for me. I couldn't have known how catastrophically wrong I was. Diana graduated summa cum laude from Princeton with a double major in economics and international relations. The moment she walked across that stage in her cap and gown, my parents began planning what they called the social event of the season. An extravagant gala to celebrate their golden child's achievement and introduce her to their network of influential connections. "We've secured the grand ballroom at the Westfield Hotel," my father announced at dinner one night, his voice brimming with pride. 300 guests, a 12-piece orchestra, and a 5-course menu designed by that celebrity chef from the cooking show your mother loves. My mother clapped her hands together, wedding planner excited. "The governor confirmed today. And the senator is bringing his daughter, who works at the UN. Perfect networking for Diana's international aspirations." I pushed food around my plate, calculating in my head the cost of this single night compared to a year's worth of my medication. The Westfield was the most expensive venue in the city. A night there could cover months of the specialized care my parents kept deferring as too expensive right now. "Could I help with anything?" I asked, hoping to find some way to be included. My mother's eyes barely flickered in my direction. "Just stay out of the way, dear. The event planners will be coming and going, and we can't have any disruptions." By disruptions, I knew she meant any sign of my medical condition. My hemophilia was the family secret, the inconvenient truth that didn't fit their perfect narrative. Diana frowned momentarily at my mother's dismissal, but quickly became distracted when conversation turned to her custom-designed gown. In the weeks leading up to the gala, our house transformed into command central for Operation Perfect Night. Caterers, decorators, and event coordinators streamed through our home daily. My parents held lengthy meetings about lighting designs and floral arrangements, while my increasingly urgent reminders about my dwindling medication supply went unheard. "Mom, I'm down to my last dose," I said one morning, holding up the nearly empty vial of clotting factor. She waved her hand distractedly, phone pressed to her ear. "Not now, Rachel. I'm confirming the ice sculpture delivery. Just use less or something." Use less. As if my medication was optional, like cutting back on sugar or screen time. My factor replacement wasn't something I could ration, it was what kept me alive. But that reality didn't fit into the gala preparations, so it was ignored. My body began showing warning signs that I couldn't ignore, even if my parents could. Bruises appeared on my arms and legs from minor bumps against furniture. Small cuts took longer to clot than they should have. One morning, I noticed tiny red dots underneath my skin, petechiae, a sign of low platelet counts that I'd learned to recognize over years of managing my own care. I had a scheduled appointment with my hematologist, Dr. Winters, but it was abruptly rescheduled when my mother realized it conflicted with the final menu tasting for the gala. "Dr. Winters understands that these things happen," she said, not meeting my eyes as she scribbled the new date on the calendar. 2 weeks after the gala. "It's not like it's an emergency." But it felt increasingly like one to me. I spent nights researching symptoms of factor depletion, recognizing too many in myself. I reached out to my online support group, and their responses confirmed my fears. "Get to a doctor now," wrote one member. "Those symptoms aren't something to mess with." The day before the gala, I made one final attempt to make my parents understand the severity of my situation. I found my father in his study, reviewing his speech for the following evening. "Dad, I really need my medication refilled today," I said, my voice firmer than usual. "I'm showing signs of factor depletion that could be dangerous." He sighed heavily, the sigh of a man dealing with an inconvenient interruption. "Rachel, I have 1,000 things to manage before tomorrow night. Your mother has the insurance card if it's that urgent, but honestly, can't this wait until after the gala? You've gone longer between doses before." But no more buts. This night is important for Diana's future. Everything else can wait. As I left to study, I realized with crushing certainty that in my family's hierarchy of needs, my health would always rank below Diana's social advancement. And tomorrow would prove just how deadly that priority system could be. The morning of the gala dawned with unusual commotion in our normally quiet house. By 7 a.m., a team of workers was setting up a styling station in our living room for the hair and makeup professionals who would arrive later. The doorbell rang constantly with deliveries. Diana's custom shoes, my mother's jewelry from the vault, my father's freshly tailored tuxedo. I woke up feeling worse than I had in months. My limbs felt heavy, my gums bled when I brushed my teeth, and dark bruises had bloomed overnight on my shins, though I couldn't remember bumping into anything. When I pressed my fingertip against my arm, the white pressure mark took too long to return to normal color, another warning sign of poor circulation and depleted clotting factors. I found my mother in the kitchen, surrounded by clipboard-wielding assistants as she approved last-minute floral arrangements. "Mom," I said, my voice competing with a cacophony of planning. "I don't feel well. I think I need to go to the hospital." She glanced up, irritation flashing across her features before settling into a distracted smile. "You're just anxious about tonight, sweetie. Take a Tylenol and lie down for a bit. We need you looking fresh for photos at 4. "It's not anxiety," I insisted, pulling up my sleeve to show her the unusual bruising. "Look at this. My factor levels are dangerously low." "I need." "Not now, Rachel." Her voice sharpened. "I have the governor's wife arriving in 20 minutes to preview the dessert selection. Can you please just handle this yourself for once? You're 19, not 9. She turned away before she could see the tears welling in my eyes. In the hallway, I passed Diana, already wrapped in a silk robe as a stylist discussed different updo options for the evening. "Hey, you okay?" she asked, noticing my expression. It was the first time anyone had asked me that question in weeks. "Not really," I admitted. "I'm out of medication and feeling pretty bad." A flicker of concern crossed her face, quickly replaced by excitement as the makeup artist arrived with cases of cosmetics. "That sucks. Maybe ask Dad?" "Oh my God. Are those the new limited edition palettes? I can't believe you got them." And just like that, I was forgotten again. I tried calling Nurse Cassandra, hoping she might be able to help, but reached her voicemail. "Hi, you've reached Cassandra Mitchell. I'm away on vacation until the 12th. If this is a medical emergency, please hang up and dial 911. The 12th. 6 days away." I ended the call without leaving a message. By late afternoon, the house had transformed into a pre-gala staging area. My father paced the foyer in his tuxedo, barking last-minute instructions into his phone. My mother fluttered between rooms in her evening gown, a vision in midnight blue silk. Diana stood at the center of it all in her custom-designed dress, looking like she'd stepped off a magazine cover. "Rachel, you're not dressed yet?" My mother's voice cut through my fog as I sat on the staircase, watching the scene unfold. "The car will be here in 30 minutes. I looked down at my sweatpants and hoodie. "I don't think I should go." "What are you talking about? Of course you're going. This is your sister's night." "Mom, I'm really not feeling well," I said, my voice barely audible above the commotion. "I think I'm having a bleeding episode. I need to stay home and rest." She studied me for a moment, probably noticing my pallor and the dark circles under my eyes. For a second, I thought she might finally understand the seriousness of my condition. Instead, she sighed with what sounded suspiciously like relief. "Fine. Maybe that's for the best. We can tell people you weren't feeling well. It's not entirely untrue. One less thing to worry about tonight. Should one of us stay with her?" Diana asked, surprising me with her awareness. "Don't be ridiculous," my father interrupted, joining the conversation. "She's an adult, not a child. She can take care of herself for one evening. We'll have our phones if there's an emergency." They continued discussing the night's agenda as if I weren't there, their voices fading into background noise as I contemplated the long night ahead of me. When the luxury car arrived to take them to the venue, my mother pressed a quick kiss to my forehead. "There's leftover pasta in the fridge if you get hungry. Try to get some rest, and we'll tell you all about it tomorrow." The front door closed behind them with a definitive click, leaving me alone in the sudden, oppressive silence of our empty house. Through the window, I watched the car's taillights disappear down the driveway, taking with them any chance of help for what was about to happen. As if on cue, I felt the first warm trickle from my nose, the beginning of a nosebleed that would nearly end my life. At first, I wasn't overly concerned about the nosebleed. I'd had them before. They were an occasional symptom of my condition that I'd learned to manage. I tilted my head forward slightly, never back, contrary to popular belief, and pinched the soft part of my nose, making my way to the bathroom to grab tissues. But after 10 minutes of steady pressure, the bleeding hadn't slowed. Blood dripped between my fingers, spattering the white porcelain sink with alarming brightness. I added more tissues, applied ice to the bridge of my nose, and sat on the closed toilet lid, trying to remain calm. Panic would only increase my heart rate and make the bleeding worse. 20 minutes passed. 30. A pile of blood-soaked tissues grew in the trash can beside me. Dizziness began to set in, the first sign of significant blood loss. I knew I needed help. I reached for my phone with fingers slippery with blood and called my father. The call went straight to voicemail. I tried my mother next with the same result. The gala was in full swing now, the venue likely loud with music and conversation. I sent a text message instead. Having nosebleed that won't stop. Feeling dizzy. Need help. I watched the screen, waiting for those 3 dots that would indicate someone was typing a response. Minutes passed before my phone finally buzzed. Take your meds and lie down. Call if gets worse. My hands shook with a mixture of weakness and anger as I typed back. No meds left. Bleeding badly. The response came faster this time. Having fun.
Can't hear phone.
Using Diana's phone. We'll check later. They weren't even reading my messages properly. The realization hit me with the same coldness as the blood loss that was making my extremities numb. I tried calling Diana, but the thumping music in the background made conversation impossible.
What?
I can't hear you, she shouted. The governor just arrived. Gotta go. The call ended abruptly, leaving me alone with the steadily worsening emergency. Blood now soaked through my hoodie, and the bathroom looked like a crime scene. I needed emergency services, but my blood-slicked fingers kept slipping on the phone screen, unable to grip properly. After 3 attempts, I managed to dial 911, only for my phone to slip from my hands and clatter to the tile floor, the screen going black as it hit the ground. Panic surged through me as I realized my lifeline was broken. I tried to stand, thinking I could reach the landline in the kitchen, but the sudden movement sent the room spinning around me. I gripped the sink for support, accidentally knocking over a cup of toothbrushes that scattered across the floor. I needed my medication desperately. Despite knowing it was futile, I frantically searched the medicine cabinet, hoping to find a forgotten vial of clotting factor. All I found was the empty prescription bottle, the refill date stamped for next week, after the gala, when my parents would have time to deal with my inconvenient health needs. My body was entering crisis mode. My extremities tingled with cold as my body diverted blood to vital organs. The edges of my vision darkened, tunneling inward. I knew these symptoms from my medical education. I was approaching hypovolemic shock from blood loss. I needed to reach someone, anyone. With the last of my strength, I crawled toward my bedroom, leaving a macabre trail of blood smears across the hallway floor. If I could reach my laptop, I could call for help through social media or email. But each movement caused more bleeding, accelerating the dangerous cycle. Halfway down the hall, I collapsed, my limbs no longer responding to my commands. The plush carpet pressed against my cheek as I lay there, blood pooling around my face. In that moment, memories flashed through my mind. All the times I'd been sidelined for Diana's achievements, all the medical appointments canceled for her activities, all the times I'd been told my life-threatening condition was an inconvenience. With fingers that felt like they belonged to someone else, I somehow retrieved my cracked phone from my pocket. The screen flickered erratically, but still functioned. I typed one final text to my family's group chat, summoning every ounce of remaining strength to hit send. I'm bleeding out. Help. As darkness closed in around me, I wondered if they would even see the message before it was too late. The last thing I remembered was the sound of blood dripping rhythmically onto the carpet, like a countdown clock ticking away the final moments of my life. Oh my God. Rachel. Rachel. My mother's voice pierced through the darkness, pulling me toward consciousness. I couldn't open my eyes, but I sensed frantic movement around me. The sharp scent of my mother's expensive perfume mingled with the metallic smell of blood that filled the hallway. "Call an ambulance." My father's voice, stripped of its usual composure.
Now.
"Is she breathing? Rachel, can you hear me?" Diana's voice, high with panic. I wanted to respond, to tell them I was still here, barely, but my body wouldn't cooperate. I floated in a strange limbo, aware but disconnected from the chaos unfolding around me. Time fragmented. Snippets of conversation reached me through the darkness. "Jesus Christ, there's so much blood." "Her pulse is faint, but it's there." "The ambulance is 3 minutes out." "Did you know she was this sick? Why didn't she say something?" That last question, asked in my father's bewildered tone, might have made me laugh if I'd been capable. I had said something. I had been saying something for days, weeks, years. The next clear memory was the sensation of being lifted, the jostling movement as paramedics transferred me to a stretcher, the sharp sting of an IV needle entering my arm, the oxygen mask covering my face, the siren wailing as the ambulance sped toward the hospital. 19-year-old female, hemophilia patient, severe epistaxis and hypovolemic shock. BP is 70/40ths and dropping. Multiple large-bore IVs established, pushing fluids. Need factor replacement and whole blood on arrival. The paramedic's clinical assessment faded as I slipped back into unconsciousness. When I next became aware, the soundscape had changed. The steady beep of heart monitors, the hum of medical equipment, the squeak of rubber-soled shoes on linoleum. I was in the hospital. I forced my eyelids open, each one feeling as heavy as lead. The harsh fluorescent lighting made me wince. As my vision cleared, I saw them, my parents, still in their formal attire, sitting in chairs beside my bed. My mother's elegant updo had collapsed on one side, and my father's bow tie hung untied around his neck. Diana sat across the room, her perfect makeup streaked with tears, her gala gown exchanged for hospital scrubs someone must have given her. A doctor I didn't recognize stood at the foot of my bed, reviewing my chart with a grim expression. When he noticed I was awake, he approached.
"Rachel, I'm Dr. Spetel."
"You're in the ICU at Mercy General. Do you understand what happened to you?" I tried to speak, but my throat was raw. A nurse offered ice chips, which I accepted gratefully. I had a nosebleed. I managed, my voice barely a whisper. "Couldn't stop it." Dr. Patel nodded. "You experienced a severe hemorrhage due to critically low clotting factor levels. You lost nearly 40% of your blood volume. We've given you multiple transfusions and factor replacement therapy. You were very lucky your family found you when they did. Another 30 minutes and we would be having a very different conversation." My mother made a choked sound, somewhere between a sob and a gasp. "When can I take her home?" My father asked, his businessman's instinct to solve problems immediately kicking in. Dr. Patel's expression hardened. "Mr. Sullivan, your daughter nearly died from a preventable medical emergency. Her prescription for clotting factor hasn't been filled in over 6 weeks, according to our records. As her medical power of attorney, that responsibility falls to you." "We've been extremely busy with our older daughter's graduation events," my mother interjected defensively. "Rachel knows how to manage her condition. She should have been more proactive about reminding us." The look Dr. Patel gave her made her shrink back in her chair. "I have the text message record here," he said, holding up a printout. "Rachel sent multiple messages over the past 3 weeks requesting medication refills. The most recent was sent at 8:42 p.m. tonight, stating clearly, 'I'm bleeding out. Help.' This was preceded by several other urgent messages that appear to have been ignored." My father's face flushed with anger, not at the doctor's accusations, but at the potential liability. "Now, wait just a minute. We provide Rachel with excellent care. This was an unfortunate oversight during an exceptionally busy period. An oversight that nearly cost your daughter her life," Dr. Patel countered. "As her physician, I'm obligated to report suspected medical neglect to proper authorities. A social worker will be visiting tomorrow to assess the situation." The word neglect hung in the air like a thundercloud. My parents exchanged panicked glances, their carefully cultivated image of perfect family life crumbling before my eyes. I drifted in and out of consciousness over the next few hours, awakening fully the next morning to find a woman with a kind face sitting beside my bed, my parents nowhere in sight. Hello, Rachel. I'm Melissa Torres from Hospital Social Services. I'd like to talk with you about your home situation if you feel up to it. Something in her gentle, direct manner broke through walls I'd built over years of being dismissed. For the first time, I told someone the complete truth about life in the Sullivan household, the systematic prioritization of Diana's needs over my medical care, the minimization of my condition, the emotional neglect that had become so normal I barely recognized it as abuse. They're not bad people, I found myself saying, surprised by my own defense of them. They just don't see me. They never have. Melissa took notes, asking occasional clarifying questions without judgment. When my parents returned, their concern appeared amplified in her presence, my mother fluffing pillows, my father asking nurses about my prognosis, both performing the role of worried parents flawlessly. But as I watched their performance, something crystallized within me. Nothing would change unless I forced it to change. My near-death experience hadn't fundamentally altered their perception of me or my needs. It had simply created a crisis they needed to manage to maintain their reputation. As Melissa left, promising to follow up, she slipped a card into my hand with her direct number. "You have options, Rachel," she whispered. "You don't have to go back to that environment." For the first time in years, I felt a flicker of genuine hope. Not the desperate hope that my parents would suddenly transform into the supportive family I needed, but the empowering hope that I could create a different future for myself, one where my health and well-being weren't afterthoughts. I closed my eyes, feigning sleep as my parents discussed in hushed tones how to handle the social worker situation. In that moment, I made my decision. I would no longer accept being invisible. I would demand to be seen, not just by my family, but by myself. I had nearly died waiting for them to care. I wouldn't make that mistake again. The hospital became my sanctuary for the next 3 weeks. My body needed time to recover from the massive blood loss and trauma, but more importantly, I needed space for my family to prepare for what came next. My parents visited daily, their concern genuine when medical staff was present, but quickly fading when we were alone. They brought flowers, balloons, and expensive gifts, tangible evidence of care they could point to if questioned. "We've canceled our summer trip to the vineyard," my mother informed me, as if this sacrifice should impress me. "We'll be home all summer to help with your recovery." Diana visited less frequently, but seemed genuinely shaken by what had happened. "I had no idea it was that serious," she admitted during one visit, perched awkwardly on the edge of my bed. "Why didn't you ever say anything?" "I did," I replied simply. No one was listening. The person who listened most was Nurse Cassandra, who returned from vacation and was horrified to learn what had happened. She became my fiercest advocate, coordinating with Dr. Patel and Melissa from social services to develop a comprehensive care plan that wouldn't rely on my parents' inconsistent attention. "You have rights as a patient," she reminded me. "Even as a dependent on your parents' insurance, you can take control of your medical decisions." I spent hours researching patient rights and medical emancipation. I learned that at 19, I could legally make my own healthcare decisions even while financially dependent on my parents. I compiled documentation of my medical history, the pattern of neglect, and the financial resources my parents could reasonably provide for my care. As my discharge date approached, I requested a family meeting in my hospital room. Dr. Patel and Melissa would be present as neutral parties. Nurse Cassandra would attend as my advocate. I prepared meticulously for what would be the most important confrontation of my life. The day arrived with a tension that crackled in the air. My parents entered the room with the confident stride of people accustomed to controlling situations. Diana slipped in behind them, her expression uncertain. Dr. Patel and Melissa sat on one side of my bed, Cassandra on the other. The stage was set. "Thank you all for coming," I began, my voice stronger than I'd expected. I've asked for this meeting because what happened to me wasn't an accident or a one-time oversight. It was the inevitable result of years of medical neglect that nearly killed me. My father started to interrupt, but Dr. Patel held up a hand, silencing him. Please let Rachel speak without interruption. I took a deep breath and continued. For 14 years since my diagnosis at age 5, my medical needs have been consistently treated as an inconvenience in our family. My appointments are rescheduled or canceled to accommodate Diana's activities. My medication is forgotten when it conflicts with social events. My symptoms are dismissed as exaggeration. I held up a folder containing printed text messages, emails, and a calendar documenting years of neglect. This isn't about blame. It's about acknowledging a pattern that can't continue if I want to stay alive. My mother's face crumpled. That's not fair, Rachel. We've provided you with the best doctors, the best treatments, when it was convenient. I finished for her. When it didn't interfere with Diana's debate competitions or graduation galas or college tours. When it fit into your schedule. But hemophilia doesn't work on a schedule. It doesn't wait for a convenient time to become life-threatening. The room fell silent. Even Diana looked stunned by the systematic evidence I'd presented. So, what do you want? My father finally asked, his voice uncharacteristically subdued. What is the point of this intervention? I want control of my medical decisions moving forward. I stated clearly. I want a portion of the family funds set aside specifically for my medical care, with me as the authorized user. I want my own apartment near the hospital where I can manage my condition without depending on your inconsistent attention. My father's expression darkened. You're asking for complete independence while still expecting financial support. That's not how the world works, Rachel. Actually, Melissa interjected, in cases of documented medical neglect, that's exactly how it can work. Rachel has grounds for legal action that could result in much more severe consequences for you both. What she's proposing is remarkably reasonable given the circumstances. The word legal hit my father like a physical blow. His mind immediately went to what a court case would do to his reputation, his business relationships, his standing in the community. You wouldn't, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. I don't want to. I corrected him. I'm offering a solution that protects everyone. You continue financial support for my medical needs as you're legally obligated to do. I take responsibility for managing those needs without depending on your involvement. No courts, no public record, no damage to the family name you value so much. My mother reached for my hand, tears streaming down her face. Rachel, sweetheart, we never meant to hurt you. We just didn't understand how serious. You didn't want to understand. I interrupted gently. It was easier not to. To everyone's surprise, Diana spoke up. She's right. We've all been horrible to her. She turned to our parents. You've always made it clear that I was the priority, that her health problems were an annoyance we had to work around. I accepted that because it benefited me, but I was wrong. We were all wrong. My father looked between his daughters, seeing perhaps for the first time the imbalance he had created. What exactly are you proposing in practical terms? I outlined my plan. An apartment near the hospital, a dedicated account for medical expenses, regular check-ins with Melissa to ensure compliance, and a structured visitation schedule to rebuild our relationship on healthier terms. And if we refuse? My father asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. Dr. Patel spoke up. Then we proceed with a formal investigation into medical neglect, with all the legal ramifications that entails. The negotiation that followed was tense but productive. My parents, confronted with irrefutable evidence and the potential legal consequences, reluctantly agreed to my terms. Diana, in a surprising show of solidarity, offered to help me find and furnish an apartment using part of her graduation gift fund. As the meeting concluded, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years, the lightness of being truly seen and heard. I had advocated for myself and succeeded. I had broken a lifelong pattern of accepting neglect as normal. I'm proud of you, Nurse Cassandra whispered as my family filed out of the room. That took incredible courage. It had. But I was discovering that courage, like so many things about myself, had been there all along, waiting for the moment I decided to stand up and claim it. 6 months after the night I nearly bled to death, my life had transformed in ways I never imagined possible. My small apartment 3 blocks from Mercy General Hospital had become my sanctuary, a space where every aspect was designed around my needs rather than despite them. The walls were adorned with my artwork, splashes of color that reminded me daily of my creative voice. My medical management system was now impeccable. A dedicated account funded by my parents ensured I never ran out of essential medications. Dr. Patel had connected me with a hemophilia specialist who actually listened when I described my symptoms. Most importantly, I had assembled a team of healthcare providers who respected me as an active participant in my own care. The legal arrangement with my parents functioned exactly as intended. They provided financial support without controlling how I used it for my medical needs. Our contact was limited to scheduled visits that had clear boundaries and expectations. It wasn't perfect, but it was sustainable, a word I'd never before associated with family relationships. My relationship with Diana had evolved in unexpected ways. Initially awkward and guilt-ridden, she had gradually become a genuine ally. She visited regularly, not out of obligation but with sincere interest in my well-being. "I've been thinking about specializing in health advocacy law," she told me during one visit, curled up on my sofa with a cup of tea. "What happened to you? It happens to a lot of people. Someone should fight for them." The irony wasn't lost on either of us, but I appreciated that my trauma had sparked something meaningful in her. People could change when confronted with the consequences of their actions. Some faster than others. My parents changed more slowly. My father still struggled to discuss my condition without framing it as a problem to be managed. My mother still occasionally suggested treatments she'd read about in lifestyle magazines, missing the point that I was now the expert on my own care. But they were trying, in their limited way, and I had learned to accept their efforts without expecting transformation. The most profound changes were within myself. I had discovered strength I never knew I possessed. I had learned to advocate fiercely for my needs without apology. Most importantly, I had built connections with others who understood chronic illness, not as a character flaw, but as one aspect of a full, complex life. My support network expanded beyond anything I'd imagined. I joined a hemophilia advocacy group and found friends who understood the daily calculations of living with a bleeding disorder. I started an art therapy group for young adults with chronic conditions, creating space for others to express what words often couldn't capture. Nurse Cassandra remained a constant presence in my life, transitioning from medical provider to mentor and friend. During one of our weekly coffee meetups, she noted the changes in me with characteristic directness. "When I first met you, you were a girl who apologized for needing medical care," she observed. "Now you're a woman who helps others demand it as their right. That's quite a journey." It was a journey that continued daily. The path toward healing wasn't linear. There were still moments when old patterns of thinking ambushed me, when I questioned whether my needs were truly valid, when I slipped into apologizing for taking up space. But those moments grew fewer and farther between as I practiced the art of self-advocacy. The most valuable lesson wasn't that I had survived a medical emergency. It was that I had survived years of being unseen, unheard, and undervalued without losing my essential self. I had emerged from the shadow of neglect not bitter, but determined to create a different reality, not just for myself, but for others. The blood that nearly killed me also saved me. I wrote in my journal on the 6-month anniversary of that terrible night. It forced a reckoning that might never have come otherwise. It showed me that sometimes you have to nearly lose everything to find what matters most: your voice, your boundaries, your worth. As I approach the 1-year mark of my new life, I've learned that healing isn't about forgetting the past, but about refusing to let it dictate your future. It's about recognizing that sometimes the family you need is one you build yourself, composed of people who see you clearly and value you completely. My condition will always be part of me, but it no longer defines me. I am Rachel, artist, advocate, survivor. I am visible now, most importantly to myself. If you're watching this and feeling unseen in your own life, please know that your needs matter. Your health matters. Your voice matters. The journey to self-advocacy isn't easy, but it's worth every difficult conversation, every boundary set, every moment of standing firm in your truth. Have you ever had to stand up for yourself against people who should have been protecting you? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear to find their own courage. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel for more stories about finding strength in unexpected places. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, sometimes the family that saves you is the one you create for yourself.